Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are and whenever you are. Welcome to the community live stream. My name is Chuck Tomasi from ServiceNow, and I am here on September 21st to talk to you about UI actions. But first, let's give everybody a minute to check in. Hey, today's topic was brought to you by one of our viewers who happens to be on right now. John has written in and said, can you tell us about UI actions? And it was so big that I had to break it into two parts. So this is part one. This is some of the basics along with a few tricks that I learned along the way that I want to share with you. We were having a wonderful chat just before the show started. A number of people show up early, and I love covering these topics, like something that you go, wow, Chuck, UI actions is pretty basic. It seems basic, but there are a lot of things in there that I must have glossed over, or the features came along later as we went through various releases, because you got to remember, I learned about UI actions over 12 years ago. So it's the platform has changed a bit since then, and I love discovering these new features and bringing them to you. Let's continue on with our lead-in while other people are joining in. This show is brought to you on YouTube, wherever gotta hit the right button. The YouTube button. I thought maybe I had a technical issue for a second. No, it's just my finger on the wrong button. YouTube, at the URL you see there, go ahead and click like, subscribe, share. You know what to do on YouTube. Turn those notifications on, and you will get a notification something like, wherever my phone is around here, something like that, where you will see my smiling face, or in this case, contemplative thought about questions you ask, so I can give you the answers behind the answers. That's why it's called Behind the Answers today. YouTube is where you can find that, and a bunch of other great content on the community channel, including mobile and performance analytics and reporting. We've got special experts that jump in and do series there. There's at least half a dozen videos a week, not including the two that I do. Mondays and Thursdays, 2 p.m. UTC is where you can find the community live stream on YouTube Live. So if you want to join in live with the chat, getting a whole bunch of friendly faces, well, names anyway, I see names going by. Oh, there are some faces in the little teeny circles next to the chat. And thank you for joining me. If you're watching this later, appreciate it just the same. We also do this on Twitch. Whoops. We also do this on Twitch. I knew that didn't look right. Also do this on Twitch over at twitch.tv/nowcommunity. Hey, it's a one-man show. I'm doing the buttons, the lighting, the camera, everything. So it's amazing any of this works at 7 a.m. That's the way it goes. It's just, I'm bringing you information and having a good time doing it. So community, I skipped right over it. Wow, my fingers are shifting along as I'm having a button disability today. There's got to be a name for that. Community is where you ask your questions. If you've got something other than UI actions today, please post it in the community. There's hundreds of thousands of people out there that are able and willing to help. Would love to help you with your discussion. So post that in community.servicenow.com. That's what you see behind me, and that's where I get a lot of the inspiration for these discussions that we have on the community live stream. So join up the discussion there. I invite you to do that if you haven't already. First, search out and make sure that nobody's asked that question before, so that you can leverage other people's knowledge, the whole discussion thread. If it's not there, then go ahead and post it in the appropriate sub-community. If it's a developer-related question, post it to the developer community. If it's related to reporting, go to the reporting and performance analytics. Lots of individual places that you can find right up here. Go to communities. There's a few of them at the bottom. It says all forums. Oh, the title's in the way. Now the titles aren't playing. Okay. All forums down here, and you can find the right information. So just a quick primer on the community so that you can get started on there. Also, if you've been on the community for a while, don't forget to check out the recommended link, which is right there. Very helpful, brings up content based on your previous searches, and I don't even know what the algorithm is, but when I look at this, I go, wow, I could really get into just about any of these discussions. Community is a wonderful place to go. Another wonderful place to go is the developer portal over at developer.servicenow.com. You can find API documentation, which we will be looking at today. You can get a free personal developer instance to try any of these experiments, exercises that we cover today. You can get free learning plans and blog articles and videos. There's a whole bunch of events There's developer meetups happening virtually around the world. They're virtually. They're not virtually around the world. They are around the world, but you get the idea. They're all happening virtually right now over at meetup.com. You can find those underneath Connect, and there's an events menu in there that also lists webinars that are coming up, yada, yada, yada. So we've got lots of information on that. More information about the meetups can be found over at meetup.com/pro/ServiceNow Dev Program. So if you want to start a chapter in your area, reach out to us. There's a form available. I can help you with that and get you onboarded so that you can have a chapter in your area. If there's not already one out there, there's 62 chapters right now? Let's see if we can make that 63. Let's see if we can make it 70 by the end of the year. Wouldn't that be cool? We do have room to grow. You can see there's a lot of spots on that globe that don't have a chapter nearby that you could be the chapter organizer. Great way to get your name out there, grow your career, develop your brand. Not a bad way to start. Just find a host, pick a topic. I'm happy to join in when the time zones allow. So look forward to that. I think there's one this week that I'll be attending in Vancouver. Let's take a look at the calendar real quick. I want to look. This is the 21st. So next week is Vancouver. October 1st is Phoenix, coming up after that. September 23rd is San Diego. Somehow I missed that. 23rd, that's Wednesday. Do I have time at noon on Wednesday? Got to look at my calendar. So look for that. A lot of great information. Again, it's going to be virtual, so dial in. Zoom is usually what we use. Another event that I'd like to tell you about, don't forget CreatorCon. Mark your calendars for October 27th. That is our half-day half-day event. It's the event, CreatorCon, workshops available, keynotes, hands-on labs will be coming out on the 20th. So we'll announce that schedule. The invites are going out on October 8th. What is that, about 2 weeks away? Not much further than that. So watch your mailbox. If you've already signed up for Knowledge 20 Digital Experience this past May, you'll automatically be enrolled. So all you have to do is pick your sessions. So lots of great information. 2 main tracks, one for our low and no coders, we call it the builder track, and one for the more experienced people, we call it the developer track. So we're going to have a keynote and then a couple of tracks, and then we'll come back at the end. In a few hours, you got everything you want, including some networking time, social time. It's going to be a wonderful event. Look for a deeper discussion on the Breakpoint podcast. Get the right screen up there. Breakpoint podcast with Jason McKee coming out this Wednesday. What would that be? The 23rd? So I will have that discussion with Jason coming out in just a couple of days. It's ready to roll. Watch your RSS feeds. Go over to bit.ly/sn-break-point and subscribe to the podcast. You can find that on Apple and Stitcher and Spotify and now Amazon as well. So wherever you find your favorite podcast, look for Breakpoint, and it will look more like code than a tennis ball. There are tennis ball podcasts out there called Breakpoint. Tuesday, the 20th of October, we've got our next Tech Now episode, so check that out. We'll be joined by Yaron Guez to talk about Process Automation Designer and Playbook. This is part 1 of 2. So October and November are going to be a 2-parter. Look forward to sharing that information with him and learning from him of what you can do. We did a little bit of that with Live Coding Happy Hour last Friday. I had some technical issues, so apologize about that. Andrew and Brad, and we were joined by Lisa Hollenstein from Germany. She was able to guide us through a number of those things. But go over to bit.ly/TN80reg and get that information. We will be doing a little bit of scripting today because we will be doing UI actions, and they require just a little bit of script for what we're doing. Those code snippets will be available in the GitHub repo that you see there, bit.ly/sn-cls. If you are not comfortable with JavaScript, go check out the JavaScript series. I invite you to do what thousands of other people have done to learn more about JavaScript and learn it on the Now platform. Quick tea break while I take care of that. Thank you to everybody who's watched and made comments and done that kind of thing. let's go to my personal developer instance and get started with today's topic, UI actions. What is a UI action? Well, this is in the pantheon of ways you can make the system do things. You can trigger logic to happen on a database action, save, update, read, create, that kind of thing, where you run some logic based on a database trigger. You can schedule a job or a flow to run based on a time, daily, weekly, every 3 hours. You can also do them manually. So UI actions are the manual triggers that happen on the screen. And you've probably seen them all over the place. They're often covered in your basic sysadmin course or implementation specialist course. But I'm going to give you my spin on these. This is not a replacement for the course material, but I would call it an augmentation of that. So one of the places, you can obviously see this big green button right up here at the top of the screen, is a UI action. I click it, something happens. What happens? I click it, a new empty form comes up, possibly with some default values in it. Okay? There are other ones. UI actions could be under this menu. I have one right now called Save. They could be, if you right click, that's the same menu, by the way. I always like to go here. It's easier for people to click than to right click. Go, where do I right click? Right click isn't as intuitive. So the form menu or the hamburger menu there. There are other places you can put UI menus. Submit is a UI action. I said UI menu. UI action here. You can also, you may see them down here as a related link. Let's go to incident. I think incident has some good examples of that. So incident, let's go to open. And there's also a number of them on the list. Besides this one at the top, I could right click a record, and here are some. Archive record, assigned to me, follow on live feed. Those all do some manually triggered logic. There's also the possibility of putting a button at the bottom. Don't see this too often. Occasionally, I think it's on SLAs. I can't remember where it was. There was something that said activate and deactivate. This menu down here is a list of UI actions, archive record, delete. If it's grayed out, it's not available for any records. You do need, I didn't mean to do that, you do need to select records for this list action to actually start working. If nothing is selected, it says, well, then I'm not going to do anything for you. And I'll get into a little bit more about how that works. Lots and lots of places. If I go into this record, let me see. I think I have a few more UI actions available from the form menu. Yeah, create outage, create problem. These are all UI actions. There's also update, resolve, delete. Some of these come out of the box. Some you can create your own, and we'll look at ways that you can create your own today. And I thought there were some related links down here. Repair SLAs is another one that's down here in the related links section. So lots of places you can put UI actions. Under maintain items, we see activate. Yeah, you're right. That's where it was. I knew I saw it. It's not a common one. So I'll get into some of the best practices as we go through this. Let me, now that we've had a quick tour of where they are, where do you go to build or maintain these? Well, one place is from the form menu. Let me go to the employee table again. Or from the list menu. You could go from the list menu, configure, UI actions. Okay, and it will bring up the UI actions for that table and any parent table. So if I was on incident and said, I want to configure the UI actions, I will see task and incident UI actions. Because remember, it's an inherited table. It's going to inherit the tasks, it's going to inherit the UI actions for that as well. Keep that in mind. You may see things other than the table that you have in here. If you're in a CMDB and you're down a few trees, there could be UI actions on base tables higher in that hierarchy. Higher in the hierarchy. That's an interesting phrase. I'm going to keep it simple today since this is a part one. You can also find them in the record itself. So if I drill into one of these, same thing. Create or configure UI actions. There they are. Do I have that at the appropriate size? Yeah, 125 is about where I want that. I could also, since this is a scoped application, or now that we're in Paris, you could do global as well, go into Studio and configure the UI actions for that. You would find those under Server Development, UI Actions. If there are none, you would create under Server Development, there's a UI action, or of course type UI action here. Let's take this approach for the moment. I know I could go to the form and say configure UI action. I want to create a UI action on my employee table to terminate an employee. Just make it real easy, because I may have employees where, let's see, is everybody active right now? I thought they were from the other day. Let's make this active. True. I don't remember where the state went, but what I'd like to do is, okay, it went from offered. We'll make Chuck a full-time employee. To remember to hit the state and the active flag and perhaps a date of termination. There's various things that happen. That's cumbersome to put into work instructions or to try and train people to remember to do it. Let's put it all in one action. And we can make it conditional to only show up when it's appropriate. First, let's talk about what that action will do. We're going to change the state to terminated. We're going to change the active field to false. That's it. And right now, these are the labels. I don't ever trust labels. I don't trust field labels. I don't trust table labels. I don't trust. They may not be true representations of what the value is behind that. So if I right-click here or go into the table, look at the state field, I can see what the choices are. But right-click on the label and say Show Choice List. It looks like they're pretty straightforward. If it says recruiting, in English it's going to be lowercase recruiting. So it's all lowercase versions of what the labels are. Good idea to check that when you're setting a value in script, which we will be doing. So let's go and create a UI action on our employee table. We've got several in here already, but none of them is called terminated. And I also want to think about where I want to place that on the form. I could put it as a button at the top and say terminate. If terminate is something you do on a regular basis, daily perhaps, then this button row or the one at the bottom of the form also is exactly the same. Best practice would be these are the things you do all the time. Saving, updating, resolving incidents. Okay. They happen quite frequently. They're the most common UI actions you use. So it makes sense to put them up there. But be cautious because there's only a limited amount of space. Okay, I'll make an excuse. Create user is not something I do from here. It was an exercise on a previous video. So don't worry about that. Terminating, I don't feel like it's something that I want to do every day. There's another location. I forgot to finish my caution statement. There's a limited number of space up here, and some people like to put very long labels. If it has a very long label, it shouldn't go at the top. It's going to use up that precious real estate because you don't know if the person is looking at a screen of this dimension or of this dimension. Okay, it may look fine to you, the developer who has this ultra-wide screen with a high resolution. You go, plenty of room. I can put 7, 8, 9 buttons up there. But when it starts to get lower resolution, obviously this is an exaggeration, but it will start to wrap and you're going to get crazy things going on with that toolbar. So limit the number, 5, maybe 6 buttons at the most, short labels. If they have longer labels, think about putting them under the form menu. Okay, this is where it might work a little better for secondary actions or a related link if it's a longer context or you want to hover over a hint of what that thing does. You could add those there. I tend to use more related links. Related links also kind of make me think of related records. So if I need a UI action that's going to do something to related records, I often put it in the related links. You decide. Okay, there's a couple of guidelines for the form UI actions. Is it just when creating list view button? Got to look at the many times the form button is not shown on a UI action form. Why? We'll get into that. That's part of the conditions. When I look at creating a new, that's a great segue actually, let me take you in there. When I look create a new UI action, up comes the UI action form. Make sure I'm not missing any other questions. No, I don't see so. I generally put buttons on the top if it's forward moving action from the process perspective. If it's moving back in the process, then it's relatedly. Another good guideline. You decide for your organization what makes sense to go where. You'll start to get a feel when things are wrong. Okay, if the button bar has 16 things on it, that's probably wrong. So let's call this one terminate. I pick the table it's going to work on. Let me blow that out just a little bit. Is going to be the employee table. Fortunately, there's only one employee table that I want. The order is where it fits in the order. If it's a related link, it's vertically. If it's a button, it's horizontally. If it's in the menu, it's vertically. You get the idea. Do I want this one to come before that one come before that one? If they're all 100, it's going to be random, maybe alphabetic, I don't know. But I am going to do something a little different. Since I don't have any related links, I'll put that, you know what, let's make it a button first. Let's make a button and let's put it at the end. Be careful if you have a delete action or a cancel action or something that's destructive, that you don't put it right next to an update. And if you do something destructive, you'll want a confirmation on that as well. So we'll talk about that in part 2 of UI actions, which is coming up, I don't know when, because I haven't scheduled it yet. But we'll talk about getting that confirmation thing in there. Some of you may know how to do this. Great. I'll show you the rest of you in a little bit. So I want this at the very end. And the action name is very important if you have one of those confirmation kind of things. I like to put it in as a best practice anyway. So I'm going to call this terminate. Actually, you know what? I'll do the table first. Terminate. It's not needed. It's not, but it does have a value. It's not needed because I'm not doing a client script. But what it does have a value for is if somebody tries to put the same UI action in a number of places, it will only represent it on the form in one place. So if I call employee terminate in one place that says this is going to do a termination, and then I try to put it in, as a button and a related link, it's going to go, I'm only going to put one on the form. So it's a nice safety valve to say, why do you have multiple UI actions with the same name? That doesn't make sense. Okay. Is it active? Yes, I want it to work all the time. Do I want to show this on new records? This is a rarity for me. I often don't present UI actions because I need the data first to determine what the UI action is going to do. In this case, I'm not going to terminate a new employee as I'm entering the record. What would be the point? Why would I enter a terminated employee? Unless, of course, I was doing legacy records. So I'm not going to put it there. Do I want to show it on update for existing records? Yes. And I believe, I thought these had some nice hoverovers. They don't. Shame on the developer who made this form. Client, we'll get into that confirmation thing in part 2. I'm not going to talk about overrides. I'm going to keep this simple. This side over on the right is where I decide where I want to place that. I've got a few form options. My form button, which I decided we will do first. The form context menu is that right click or the form menu that you saw, or a form link is down in related links. The form style is fairly new. I think it came out in Jakarta, Istanbul. And I can say primary, destructive, or unstyled. Default is unstyled, which is just gray outline, gray box on the button. Primary is this bright green, which you will see for submit, and destructive is red. Cancel, delete, destroy, terminate. That sounds like a good one. Only works on buttons. It works on doesn't have any bearing on links. And you can see here's the rest of the list ones. They'll go through those in a minute, but the banner button was up at the top like the new button. The bottom button was down below by the menu. There's the context menu where I right-click a record. The list choice is that drop-down list where we saw delete and tag and flag and follow on Instagram, whatever else. List choice, I can't remember where it is, and list link is like a related link for the list. So messages are going to be much like client script messages field if I need to pass some translatable key to the client portion. I'm not using that, so I don't care. Comments, terminate an employee, want to be a good citizen, and put my comments in here. I would also probably put what is in the state. The hint is handy for a hover over, so I can put terminate this employee. The condition is whether or not, this gets back to, who asked the question? Abhishek. This gets back to whether or not it should display this UI action. I'm going to put in here current.active. Simply says if this condition resolves to true, again, no hint, but this condition expression must resolve to true. Yes, I could put something like this. I could put a number of things, but this alone says, is this a truthy expression? I might have other things that say gs.isInteractive. Okay, I can put other bits and pieces in here to say, all right, somebody has to be at a browser. It's a human, not an API. I don't know how an API would hit this, but you get the idea. All I want to do is present this for active records. If it's a terminated employee, active is false, it won't show the button. I don't need to terminate a terminated employee. That doesn't make any sense. It also helps limit the number of things that are on the form to make sure they're presented in the right context. So that's what the condition does for you. And then the script carries out the actual action. So for this, I'm going to say current.active equals false. Current.state equals terminated. That should be a string. The first one should not. And current.update. Now, if I leave it like that, when it hits the update, it's going to do the same thing as if I hit the update button, which is bring me back to the list. I may not want to go back to the list. I may or I may not. Let me show you real quick what happens when I do that. A little skinny out of that. Go back to our employee list, reload the form so I can get my new UI action. There it is, big red terminate. Okay, very hard to miss. And I currently have Chuck Tomasi, FTE, active. I hit terminate and it goes back to the list. Notice that I am now false. I go back in that record. I am in fact terminated. Ooh. And no terminated button shows for a terminated employee because active is false. Again, you may have other conditions to say whether or not this should be presented or not. So that UI action is doing great, but I want to stay on the form. If you want to stay on the form, there's one simple thing you do in the script, and that is put in here. Oop, I'm not sure why that went. Too much scrolling. Get back there. Action.set redirect URL. Case is important on this. Current. Okay, that comes right from the documentation. I went over to the developer portal, and I don't look up action. You'll get like 7,000 results. Look up set redirect URL. You get this page right at the top of the APIs, and you can drill in, and it will say, here's how you use it. This has been expanded in recent releases. Originally, we only had like set redirect URL, and I think set return URL was another one. Return URL will say, when I'm done updating, don't go back to where you came from. Go back to where I tell you to come from. It takes a URL or a glide record. Both of these do. It says object URL. That one's missing a parenthesis. But there's some other things in here. I encouraged the docs team to build out the action API a little bit better. So fortunately, we've got that now. Just doing my job. I put that into this. And it doesn't have to go at the end, by the way. Some people think it does. It doesn't. It's not happening after. It's actually injecting something into the header of the form to say, oh, when I'm done, go here. I've seen this in other places in UI actions. It works just fine. It's almost like a preload thing. So don't be concerned about where that goes. Let's close, update that, and load it again. Let's change our demo data back to FTE active. This will bring me my terminate button. And when I do this, it now stays on the form. This is one of the most handiest things I do in UI actions. I update and stay. That's all I want to do. So very easy to do. Now it's more like the save button. Okay, so that's a simple show right click edit action. Did that. Keep button label small, minimize the number of buttons. Continue many object, yeah. So I talked about all those other things for things that are used frequently. If you have, I'm going to preach this again, if your script starts to get rather long, consider using a script include and calling that. I like to make the scripts in my business rules and the scripts in the UI actions and other scripts as small as possible and put the code that really does the work into the script includes. So think of script includes as the brain of your business logic. Then if I had something that says, oh, I want to terminate an employee from a UI action, I just call that script include method. If I want to do that from a business rule, call the same script include method. It just calls terminate employee, and it does whatever it needs to do. We have another question in there? List choice is after selecting boxes, and list view choice is, okay, yeah, we'll get to the list choice. Good segue, because we're going to do that now. Let's create a list action for a course. Oh, stay on the right screen here. Let's go create another one. This time I am going to take my CLS courses table, and you can see I've got no instructors in here. When we had an incident and right-click Assign to Me, it set the Assign To field to my user ID. This is not an Assign To field. This is an instructor field, has a different name, but I want the same kind of, let's see, show instructor. It's a reference field to sysuser, same kind of functionality. So I don't have to open up every record or go double-click, Chuck. Oh boy, this is getting tedious. It's quicker to say right-click, Assign to Me, right-click, Assign to Me. Okay, so let's do that. We're going to create a list action to do the Assign to Me real fast. Go to Studio, create another application. You know what? I think I'll stay here. I showed you a couple of different ways you can do it. Since I'm on a scoped app, I like to stay here. That way I can build on one screen and test on another one. UI action, assign, make me instructor. So we won't confuse it with the other Assign to Me. Table is going to be the course table. I'm going to make this called course assign instructor. Fair enough. Can't happen on a new record. How are you going to get a new record on a list? That doesn't make sense. Let's do this as a list context menu. Yeah, the color is not going to matter. The condition, do we need a condition? Let's look at our data again. Probably active is true. Why would you assign an instructor to a false? So let's do current.active. Easy enough. And I'm going to put in here current.instructor equals gs.getUserID. And if that feels a little foreign to you, GS is a glide system. GetUserID simply says use my sysid as the value that goes into this field. Current.update, this is very much like the form. I'm still doing a record at a time. And I don't need the action set redirect because it's not going to go anywhere. I'm doing this from the list. But what I can put in here is gs.addInfoMessage and spit out the current dot, was it name? Current.name. Put in a message that says instructor is now gs.getUser display value. I'm taking a guess here. It's not auto-completing for me for whatever reason. Let's try that. I'm going from memory on that one, but we'll put a nice message at the top. Save that. Reload our list. Bit of a shortcut here. You don't have to go to this reload refresh list. You could just click the filter up here where it says all, refreshes the list. And I can say, take this one. There's my make me instructor. All right, I didn't do the add info message for whatever reason. This is where you go and look at the logs and see, did I do something evil and bad? And it says, yes, add info message. It says, I have no idea what add info, I've add info message. Nice typing there, Charles. Nobody caught me on that one. So go back here, very easy to fix. Take that out, update. If it doesn't work, look at the logs. If it does work, look at the logs. Refresh the list. It did the assignment part, it just didn't get me the nice status message. So make instructor. Security does not allow execution that action against the specified record. That's lovely. I wonder what that's all about. It worked before. Make me the instructor. Maybe that one has some ACLs or something on it. And I'm still not getting my message. Am I still getting an error? Did I update the get display value is incorrect. All right, let's go look at what it should really be. Get name, glide system. Glide system has many things to it. And I want get user display name. Isn't that what I typed? Nope. Is it get user display name? Because I thought there was a get user display value. Get user display name. Okay. There is a get user that gets a user object and has some more stuff in it. I'm not going to get into that today. Get user display name. Let's try that. I just want to see the status message before I go on. I did not pre-write this script, obviously. Courses, all. I'm going to run out of courses real fast. Make me the instructor. It doesn't like that one for some reason. Make me the instructor. It doesn't like any of them. Security does not allow the execution of that action against the specified record. Okay, let's make you nothing. Make me the instructor. There it is. Advanced Blork instructor is now Chuck Tomasi. We got our message. I don't know what's going on with those other records at the moment. Don't have time to check it out. Says, yeah, they like that. Many times when I try to create a UI action, the selection for type lacks form button, form link, form context. If it's missing something, because I noticed a little while ago one of my instances was missing the form style. For whatever reason, the form got a little out of whack. I don't know if somebody else is monkeying around with your forms, an admin is doing a form layout or a form design on that. Go check that. They should be there. You can always double check in, it sounds like a form layout to me because I've seen that before on other forms. Go into a show XML on any of these forms. Let's see if I can get it this time. And you should see every value for every field in there. And for example, there's your form section, form action, false, false, form button, false, list action, true. So you will see that the fields and the values are there. They just may not be displayed on the form. So take a look at that. Oh, you're right. These are not active, which is why it won't let me do that on those. The UI action is working perfectly, but it comes up as some kind of crazy security issue. All right, if you see that, you now know what to do. The other thing that I wanted to show you is if you are doing a list action. Maybe I wanted to do a number of these to assign to me at the same time. It works very similar. If I change this from a list context menu to a list choice menu, that's the one at the bottom. Let's save that. And update. Let's just change these to nothing. There's nothing to say that, because it's false, I can't go in and do a list edit. Anyway, I could still assign that to me. Okay. It's just the UI action won't let it assign to me at this point. Let's take that one. I wrote the condition and I didn't remember what it did. Okay, refresh this list. Bink. And down here, you will see make me the instructor. Come on, zoom in. Zoom in. Zoom in while it's, okay. Make me instructor. That didn't even get bigger. Shame on that. But it's not lit up. It's gray. It's disabled until I do something like that. Which is interesting because one is true and one is false. So it says make instructor. I'll do one of two of those. So if you ever see that one of two thing, you'll know why. And it still works as current dot whatever because it's taking one record at a time. I still get my message. Now there may be a point where you want to create something, or you want to create a banner or a, what do they call, footer button, banner or bottom button. Not the best terminology, but okay. If you create a banner button, let's go create one real fast on that same table. So UI action. This is one of those funky little tricks that I don't know if it's documented or not. I haven't seen it, but I learned it in the community a while ago, and call it display message. We'll put it on the course table. We're not going to actually do anything to a record. I am going to make a list banner button. Okay, we'll take insert off. We'll call this course message. No condition. We'll just do a gs.add info message. Okay, display message. Okay, something real simple for our list. But there is a missing piece in there that you may not notice at first. If I refresh this list, there's my new button, nice big banner button, and I click it and it says no records selected. Why would I need records selected to display a message or to launch a cleanup script or something that doesn't involve selecting any records? If I select a record, then it works. Well, that's annoying because this particular action doesn't need a record. It's just displaying a message. That makes absolutely no sense. The way to get around that is to change your action name to start with sysverb. Okay, I don't normally do this because there are many out-of-the-box UI actions. In fact, if you look under UI actions, it's under system definition, UI actions, and I say show me all of the UI actions where the action name starts with sysverb underscore. You will get, out of the 1,642, about a third of them, 449 of them. And I'm going to put on that list the action name right after the table. Okay? Sysverb new, sysverb view change, sysverb update, sysverb insert. These are reserved words. Do not use them for your UI action unless, of course, you want to override whatever the default one does. If you don't like the new button and you want to make a new button, you can call it new, call it sysverb under insert, and it will override that UI action. Sysverb delete, sysverb empty. Some of these I'd never even heard of, let alone know what they do. Some are pretty easy to understand. Insert and content, insert and stay. There's lots of different ones of these. Sysverb underscore is a special one. And one of the most special ones that I like is sysverb underscore cancel. If you're making UI action and you want to do a save, you can do a current.update. If the form has mandatory fields that are empty, using the action name sysverb under cancel, if I've got time, I'm going to show that to you, we'll save the form without the mandatory fields. So it's like a temporary save draft. I often use it on a UI action called save draft. Maybe we can do that in a second. But sysverb underscore something. Make it unique. Make it like, use your table name, whatever it is in there, that makes that special. And that will allow you to go back to, not favorites, recent, go back to the courses, display message, now displays without having to select records. So now you know how to get around selecting records. How do you get around mandatory fields? Well, let's make a field mandatory. I thought I had one on here. I do not. Let's say instructor is mandatory, and I haven't filled it out yet. Okay, so real quick, I'll configure dictionary, make it mandatory, and of course, if I try to save this form, it will say, you haven't filled out all the mandatory fields. You gotta go fill out instructor. However, if I've got a long form, and I've seen this on some companies that have very long change request forms, for example, and there are a lot of fields and they don't know all of the information on that first initial, hey, I need a change, or I'm hiring an employee. If you don't have all the information, but there are mandatory fields, like, okay, it'll take me 2 hours to find this out and go fill out the fields. I just need to save my work. Save and continue. Don't kill me. We can go in and create a UI action on the course table. Oops, my fault. UI action. We'll just call this save draft. Let's put that on the course table as we saw before. Same thing. I probably could have done an insert and stay on the other one. Let's do a form context menu since we haven't done one of those before. And it needs a special name, sysverb under cancel. Remember, you can only do one action name per form. So you can't have a cancel button and a cancel right click action. Not going to work. I'm going to, you know what? I do want to use that one on an insert. I may be filling out the form for the first time and don't have all the information. I'll give that a little cheap exercise. And let's just say current.update action.set redirect URL current. Okay? Save it and stay on the page. We could even put in gs.add info message. These three often go together in my mind. That says gs.get message. We're going to make this translatable right from the start. Woohoo! And put in saved. Okay. I didn't put in a hard literal string that time. So proud. Okay, reload the form. Actually, you know what? Let's go back to the course list, create a new one, and give it a name. September. That's a pretty unimaginative thing. We'll call it September, and under here, I have save and save draft. If I try to do save, it's going to say, you don't have those. If I do save draft, it does save. Ooh, okay, so kind of dangerous if you have things that really need to be regulated and say, we must have our mandatory fields. But if you've got a form that you want to allow people to save occasionally, call it sysverb under cancel. And it seems kind of crazy because you're thinking, well, wouldn't that just cancel the operation? No, it's a special name. So there's your little tip and secret. Any other questions? How do we create context or drop-down application menu in navigation panel? Do we use UI pages or macro? In the navigation panel to what? Abhishek, you're going to have to clarify. I'm not sure where you're looking. You're talking about over on the left nav menu? So I'm thinking, there's no right click here. You either edit the module and it will take you into the module. These don't have right click. Haven't for many, many releases. So there's nothing really to right click on the navigation menu. If you're talking about on a list, like if I'm looking at incidents and I want to right click, let's look at some incidents other than the ones assigned to me. Go to here. This is the, did I not leave my instructor? Oh no, I turned it into a list menu option. So these would be UI actions here. So edit module brings you right to the module that you edit. Okay, that's if you wanted to make more of these stars and pencils and stuff, that's not something you do. Okay, as far as I know, that's not available to customers to do. Let's see. What is the usage of isolate script in all of the scripting components? When isolate script is checked, I have seen actions will not be performed. That is a very good question. I think it's beyond the scope of what we're doing here. I don't see isolate script in this. Is it on the form? Don't think I've ever used that before. Let's see if it's in here. Isolate script false. Interesting. Going to have to check into that. We'll put that into part 2. Excellent question. Not something generally used for the beginner as we go through UI actions. Let me check my notes, make sure I covered everything that I want to cover today. List options, say 1 of 2. We did that. Yeah, that brings me to the end. Woohoo! All right, so UI actions are a great way to set fields, trigger actions, do things out of a script include, that kind of thing. And most are quick to build and easy to debug with some low-code operations. So you don't need to be this involved computer science to trigger UI action. If you need to leverage more complex logic, you work with somebody who builds it in a script include and you just call that. Much like we didn't write current action.get set redirect. How do we delete multiple records using pagination? That would be done through a script, or very carefully, you could do that through a fixed script if you needed to. That's why deleting records is not really recommended. If you're doing that in dev, you probably want a dev cleanup script of some type. Either as a fixed script or something of that nature. I generally don't recommend deleting records. The exception for me is always when I'm trying to do an import and it didn't import correctly and I'm going, wow, this is just complete chaos and I don't want those anymore. I need to retest it so I get those records created properly. Then I have a little script off to the side that I say, good, go do a delete multiple on this table, and away they go. You can obviously put in filters in there. So join me next time on the 24th, in 3 days, on Thursday at 2 p.m. UTC for Flow Designer transform functions. This, I believe, came out in Orlando. Very useful stuff. Again, a way to reduce the need to write script for some of these operations you do on Flow Designer data pills. So we're going back to Flow Designer. We're going to cover the data transform functions, the little FX on a data pill. Very useful stuff. And then next Monday, I'm going to be talking about views and view rules. And there, again, like this, I discovered a lot of stuff that I thought I knew, but there are so many little nuances to these things that can really help you out if you know how to use them effectively. So I look forward to talking to you then. Until then, everybody stay safe and be kind, learn something, share something, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.